Hi, lovely to see you, Detective. You'll be getting a subpoena soon. I have these excellent new attorneys, and they found possible evidence tampering in my case.
Oh, and if you don't come, I'm gonna have to sue you into oblivion for using my name and likeness without my express written consent.
Hey besties! Welcome back to my channel. Things are really heating up in the ongoing legal battle between Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and Wayfair Studios. The latest twist? Taylor Swift is now caught in the crossfire. Apparently she's scheduled to be deposed in October. But here's the kicker. It would happen 3 weeks after the official discovery period for depositions closes. Naturally, this has sparked even more disputes between the parties, with lawyers arguing over timelines, relevance, and just how much Taylor's testimony could shake things up. Honestly, this case keeps getting messier by the day, and we're just here trying to keep up. So, right now, the big fight is over an extension of time. Blake Lively is asking for more time, but Wayfair Studios has their own timeline in mind. And honestly, the whole situation is a total mess. Let's break down where things currently stand. There have been major disagreements between Blake, Justin Baldoni, and the Wayfair team, especially about how broad these subpoenas should be, and what documents and information actually need to be shared. Every step seems to spark another round of disputes, and it's really turning into a full-on legal tug-of-war. The dispute isn't just about deadlines, it's also about subpoenas and the kind of information being demanded. This includes documents from third parties, as well as materials that Blake and Wayfair are expected to produce for each other. It's led to a lot of back and forth in court just to figure out what Blake is actually entitled to receive. And if you've been following this, you know Blake has been asking for far more than what the Wayfair parties think is reasonable, pushing the boundaries on what should be shared and making the negotiations even more complicated. However, the court has made it clear that Blake isn't entitled to everything she's asking for. There have been multiple instances where her motions were quashed, subpoenas were significantly narrowed, and some requests were outright denied. At times, she sought information that the judge has ruled would cross the line and invade someone's privacy. So, as you can imagine, it's been a constant battle, one that keeps both sides running back to court again and again. Discovery disputes like these aren't unusual in high-profile cases, but in this situation, they've caused major delays. Every time there's disagreement, whether it's over what Blake wants versus what Wayfair believes is reasonable, it ends up back in court. The judge has been consistent, though, ruling partly in Blake's favor and partly against her in many of these disputes. This back and forth has slowed down the entire process and added even more tension to an already complicated case. At the heart of the current fight is the issue of timing and document production. Blake has been requesting an extension because she argues that Wayfair is dumping a massive number of documents right before depositions, particularly signal chats from Steve Sarowitz. Apparently, Steve just produced a huge batch of materials, and Blake's team says they need adequate time to review everything to figure out what's relevant for the upcoming depositions of Steve, Justin Baldoni, and Jamie Heath. Just yesterday, Blake filed a formal request to extend the deadlines by a couple of weeks, moving the cutoff from September 30th, 2025 to October 10th. In the motion, her team explained that this extra time is essential to properly prepare for and conduct the depositions of these key defendants, given the recent voluminous and delayed productions from Wayfair. The court has already seen that Blake previously informed them about these delays, which makes this extension request a critical step in keeping her side prepared. Regarding the motion to compel, Blake recently sought to obtain documents, including the signal chats and a variety of reports, particularly those related to HR. She filed a broad omnibus motion to compel these materials, but the court's ruling was mixed. Some of her requests were granted, while others were denied. In other words, she didn't get everything she was hoping for, but she did secure certain key documents. This partial victory still plays into her current request for an extension, as she now needs time to review and incorporate these newly granted materials into her deposition strategy. Because of all of this back and forth, there's now a looming deadline for producing the remaining documents. Some of the materials that Blake is supposed to receive are a few days late, although Wayfair claims she should get them today. Despite that, Blake is requesting a 20-day extension to ensure she has enough time to go through everything. In her motion, she explains that the current deadline for depositions is approaching quickly, and with these late and voluminous document productions, she needs additional time to prepare thoroughly for the upcoming depositions. The original deadline for depositions was set for September 30th. Blake's team is now seeking to extend the deadline for closing fact discovery by 6 weeks so that it can run concurrently with expert discovery. Wayfair partially opposed this request, but the court partially granted it in an order dated July 15th. Then, on September 8th, both parties jointly moved to amend the case plan to extend the deadline for completing expert discovery as well, reflecting the ongoing delays and the need to give both sides sufficient time to prepare. The parties also agreed to extend discovery by 30 days, which the court officially ordered. Then, on September 10th, the counsel for both sides met to discuss Blake Lively's requested extension, but they reached an impasse. While the plaintiff's counsel and the Jones parties consented to the request, Wayfair's lawyers refused to agree to what Blake's team described as a modest extension. This disagreement has only added more tension to an already complicated timeline, and further fueled the ongoing battle over document production and depositions. Wayfair, however, refused Blake's modest extension request. Instead, they insisted that they would only agree to an extension of the current deposition deadline if it applied to all discovery, including both party and third-party depositions, for a full 30 days. Counsel Jed and Street Wallace have not publicly stated their position on this issue. In their notice to the court, Wayfair didn't provide a detailed explanation. They simply stated that they wanted a 30-day extension. Meanwhile, Blake's team emphasized to the court that many discovery materials still haven't been produced, which is exactly why this modest extension is necessary. Following this, Ellen Garup, representing Wayfair, sent her own letter to clarify her side, explaining that she was aware of the recently produced and forthcoming documents, and addressing how these impacted the deposition schedule. Ellen Garup clarified that she had known about these forthcoming documents for a month, long before Blake agreed to the depositions scheduled for September 15th. Back on August 4th, Blake moved to compel further document production from the Wayfair parties, seeking several months' worth of additional communications. By August 11th, Wayfair opposed her motion, but also indicated they would produce numerous additional documents. After all the briefing and negotiations, the parties ultimately agreed on the deposition schedule. Steve Sarowitz on September 15th, Jamie Heath on September 18th and 19th, and the following dates for the remaining depositions. This timeline reflects the ongoing tug-of-war over documents, deadlines, and deposition preparations in this high-profile case. The deposition schedule for Justin Baldoni was set for September 22nd. At the time the parties agreed to these dates, Blake was already aware that additional documents would be produced before the depositions. Wayfair clarified that Mr. Sarowitz's responsive, non-privileged signal messages would be available to her by September 12th. Blake, however, incorrectly claimed that Wayfair insisted these communications would not be produced until the date of his deposition. In reality, Wayfair had specifically informed her that both Mr. Sarowitz's and Miss Nathan's responsive, non-privileged signal messages would be produced ahead of time. Additionally, Blake has been implying that Wayfair is seeking a blanket 30-day extension of the discovery cutoff. That's misleading. In fact, Wayfair is only requesting a limited modification to schedule Taylor Swift's deposition during the week of October 20th to 25th due to her prior professional obligations. Whether or not the court grants the broader extension sought by Blake, Wayfair respectfully requests the scheduling order be modified solely to accommodate this third party. Deposition, the Wayfair parties clarified that their request for an extension is solely to accommodate the deposition of Taylor Swift, who has agreed to appear but is unavailable before October 20th. They made it clear to the court that they are not seeking to extend all discovery deadlines. Everything else in the case would proceed on the original schedule. This extension is purely to take Taylor's deposition without unnecessarily delaying any other aspects of the case. Unsurprisingly, Blake's team isn't letting this go quietly. They responded this morning with their own letter, presenting their perspective to both the court and likely the media. In their response, they argue that the defendants have repeatedly tried to involve Taylor Swift in this litigation as part of what they describe as a relentless media strategy. Blake's team points out that even if Taylor has agreed to sit for a deposition between October 20th and 25th, 3 weeks after the close of fact discovery, Wayfair has not demonstrated sufficient good cause for this relief. They also argue that the defendants were not diligent in requesting this extension, citing precedent from Judge Lyman, which holds that good cause is typically found when the moving party has acted diligently and reasonably. Blake's team argues that the Wayfair parties have not acted with diligence. According to them, the need for more time was entirely foreseeable, and Wayfair's failure to secure Taylor Swift's deposition during the existing discovery period creates a substantial risk of unfairness. While Wayfair claims Taylor isn't available until October 20th, they are silent on any efforts, if any, to schedule her deposition earlier within the discovery window. Blake's lawyers point out that, based on correspondence between the parties, Wayfair did not contact Taylor's counsel about a deposition date or location until just this week. They describe this as a blatant lack of diligence and a disregard for her privacy and busy professional schedule. Discovery has been ongoing for more than 6 months, and Taylor's calendar should have been presumed full well in advance. At any point during these 6 months, Wayfair could have served a subpoena and negotiated an agreeable date for the deposition. But they didn't. Instead, they previously noticed her deposition in May, which led to a barrage of press coverage, only to withdraw the subpoena shortly thereafter. Now, long after all other party and third-party deposition dates have been negotiated, Wayfair is requesting to take Taylor's deposition alone. More than 3 weeks after the close of fact discovery, and just 10 days after expert reports are due, without ever serving a renewed subpoena or explaining the necessity of this timing, Blake's team argues that Wayfair has not justified why this deposition is critical, nor have they addressed the potential disruption to the case schedule, including the likely need for follow-up discovery and additional depositions. Typically, third-party depositions require careful planning to avoid such issues, and Wayfair should not benefit from their inexplicable delay. The key point Blake's lawyers make is that the court should not grant the extension solely for Taylor Swift's deposition because Wayfair has not shown diligence, and rewarding this lack of diligence would be unfair. They attach an email memorializing a phone call between the parties, which represents their interpretation of events, claiming that the deposition was never formally confirmed with Taylor's counsel and that Wayfair may not have actually spoken to her attorneys. Meanwhile, Wayfair insists in court filings that they have conferred with Taylor's attorneys and that she has agreed to sit for a deposition. The judge essentially has to take Wayfair at their word, but parts of their filings are conspicuously blacked out and sealed. What's clear, though, is that Blake Lively herself initially identified Taylor Swift as a relevant witness in her disclosures. According to Blake, Taylor could provide testimony related to alleged misconduct on set, sexual harassment, and disputes over production, editing, and creative decisions for the film. Wayfair's filings conveniently omit this context. They note that over 100 witnesses were listed in Blake's initial disclosures, most of whom aren't being deposed, and use this to argue that Blake shouldn't be allowed to disrupt the case schedule for Taylor's deposition. Essentially, their argument is, we do not consent to any depositions, especially third-party depositions with only tangential relevance, taking place weeks after the close of fact discovery and in the middle of expert discovery. The reasoning is straightforward: allowing a deposition at this late stage could disrupt the schedule, potentially requiring additional discovery or depositions, and would unfairly complicate an already packed timeline. So, while Blake's team wants to push for Taylor's testimony, Wayfair is drawing a firm line, emphasizing the timing, relevance, and procedural fairness. Wayfair emphasizes that allowing a deposition this late could create the need for additional follow-up depositions based on witness testimony. That's why third-party witnesses are typically deposed at the start of discovery, not at the end. Delaying Taylor Swift's deposition until the last minute is described as grossly irresponsible, and Wayfair argues that the court should not reward this lack of diligence by granting an extension. Doing so could seriously disrupt the case schedule and even affect the trial date. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift's attorneys filed a response to the court. Venable LLP, representing Taylor, clarified, since the beginning of this case, Taylor has had no material role in the action. She did not agree to a deposition, but if compelled by subpoena, her schedule could accommodate it during the week of October 20th, provided the parties resolve their disputes regarding scheduling. Importantly, Taylor's counsel stated that she takes no position on the underlying dispute, making it clear that she is neutral and not actively siding with either Blake or Wayfair. In other words, Taylor is framing this as a cooperative compliance rather than voluntary participation. She is essentially saying, I'm not taking sides, but I will comply if legally required, and I can make time in the week of October 20th, if the parties can work it out. This carefully worded response allows her to maintain neutrality while also signaling, to the court and the public that she is not a material player in the case, undercutting any narrative that she is actively involved on either side. Wayfair points out that Taylor Swift's scheduling conflict is due to her professional commitments. However, they did contact her for a deposition, and it's important to note that the deposition deadline isn't until September 30th, so technically, they still had time to subpoena her within the normal discovery window. Yes, it's happening at the last minute, but it still falls within the active deposition period. It's possible that Wayfair decided to depose Taylor in response to testimony from another witness or after, reviewing emails and text messages that Blake produced. That could explain the timing. They may simply need clarifying information. On the other hand, Blake's team is framing this as a potential PR move, making it look like Taylor's involvement is controversial or strategic. Taylor, for her part, doesn't want to be involved in the dispute. She is making it clear that she isn't supporting either side. She is neutral. Her position is essentially, Judge, if you order this deposition, we can make her available in October. But she has no material testimony to provide and does not want to be pulled into this conflict. So, while the motions to compel and extension requests are ongoing, Taylor's stance highlights her desire to remain neutral and avoid being seen as taking sides in this high-profile legal battle. Depositions in this case are being conducted on an extremely tight schedule, and in situations like this, deadlines are often adjusted when discovery issues arise. It's common in federal court for trial dates and deadlines to shift. While Blake is at the end of her discovery period and seeking Taylor Swift's deposition now, it's important to note that Blake herself previously identified Taylor as a relevant witness in her initial disclosures. She's also requesting a 20-day extension